Good afternoon, Doug.
Hello, sir.
Hope I'm not taking you away from something regarding family.
No, I there's a sort of she's
Survive.
probably the she's probably the closest thing I have to a goddaughter, the
I saw
daughter
that.
of a friend of mine who's she's not in good shape. So
Thought she was
it's
getting better.
well, she finally got herself to the hospital and they were treating her, but it was a deteriorative curve, and she ended up needing to be intubated and is now transferred to a larger medical center. And but she's they said on arrival she's really sick, so it's not
We can do this
clear.
another day, Doug.
Yeah, it's not clear where things are headed with her. But um, if I may get a call, in which case I'll have to cut us short. But no,
No,
I'm good. I'm good with this. This
because I
is
thought that I had seen an announcement that she was getting better or something. Wasn't it
yeah,
Cheryl in a
yeah.
picture
Cheryl,
with her?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Cheryl posted, and that was sort of earlier on. She really took a turn for the worse pretty dramatically, which is apparently the pattern with this disease for some people. Some people turn and battle back, and some people it gets their hooks into them.
She looks really young.
Yeah, she's like 26. Yeah,
Where is she?
she's in I think South Carolina. Yeah,
Hate to
so
ask, but was she double vaxxed?
she had literally just gotten her first shot and immediately became ill on the heels of that, not from the vax, but from the apparent, they think a cohort, a person in her office. And she got sick, and her boyfriend got sick, but her boyfriend sort of, had a stronger constitution and was able to sort of, tolerate it and get to the far side. She, not so much. And she also delayed getting to the hospital a frighteningly long time. So by the time, her mother basically, because her boyfriend said, she's like blue. And her mother, who's a nurse, said, you either get yourself immediately to the hospital or I'll call the police and have an ambulance come and take you. And had she not done that, she would have been dead by the next day. Her pulse ox was really trashed. So yeah, it's it's pretty horrendous. But but that that isn't what we're brought together for.
What brought us together, Doug? I don't know. I left it
so
at the door.
so you have shared sort of on numerous occasions um, a sort of challenge around the the whole concept of leaving everything at the door and coming empty. And I'm curious. I'm curious whether that description is something you may have accessed in some other part of your life.
You mean coming empty?
Yeah. Or being really in, you know, wide open receive mode.
Receive mode, no problem. Wide open, no problem. But coming empty, problem. That's what I said. That's my understanding, okay?
Okay.
Because I can be very receptive. I can look for signals of all kinds, but those signals impinge on something that already exists. They will then hook with meaning to whatever's already here. And so if there's nothing here to hook onto, there's nothing for it to mean, you know? So that might be okay. So I probably come from a rather absolute interpretation of some of these words, but that's because I really am trying to understand distinctions and nuances. Okay. So if I say, is it this in the absolute? And you say, no, it's this, and then we can explore this area right here, which is what I think we're doing. Okay. And so I think there's an ability to interpret, there's an ability to receive, there's an ability to be, considering multiple different things at the same time. None of that is a problem for me, at least, from a conscious point of view. But I don't know what it means to come empty. That is the phrase that I really want you to explain to me because it's used often. Okay. And I think I know what it means, but I think it's probably expressible in other ways than something that sounds so absolute. That's what I'm hoping to be able to achieve.
So could you imagine experiential, sort of whole body, whole being experiential receiving without the back end hooks that you alluded to?
No.
So the the sort of conceptual frame around the idea of being empty is, if those hooks didn't exist, if it wasn't being connected to or referencing anything, it was just literally being received with 100% tuning in on the receiving end. So it's, 100% attention and consciousness, awareness, sensing, feeling in terms of energy dimensions of how somebody's expressing themselves, or what nonverbal cues they're projecting, all of that. The idea of coming empty, the sort of corollary of it in my frame is in service to. So what I'm most interested in is getting, grokking, receiving everything that's incoming without the reason for the empty construct is that if I'm arriving with stuff, that if I'm carrying in at the beginning my beliefs, my cognitive biases, my fears, my takes, my whatever, there's a fundamental allocation of resource to that. And that allocation of resource to carrying those things in and sustaining those things concurrently is a diminishment of sort of attentional energy and focus on the receiving end. That, there's so much cognitive resource in a moment to moment. And if a chunk of my total cognitive resource as a fundamental is allocated to maintaining internal stuff I'm bringing into the room with me, then I'm not 100% present at attention, receiving, listening, getting what somebody is sharing without any from a place of sort of real genuine curiosity and caring. Like if I while I'm on the receiving end, if I'm sort of pattern matching and or um, comparing and or judging, then um, I'm literally going to filter as a result of that. That's an intrinsic sort of lensing and filtering being applied. So my experience of that on this beam is between you and I is that you'll share, I don't understand empty. I don't understand coming in that way. And then you'll usually share a whole bunch of stuff about why that doesn't work for you and what you automatically have to have with, that automatically is in the room with you regardless. And that all of the processing and cross comparing and judging and filtering and whatever, analyzing and why that's valuable and important and critical to the mission and in service to and all this stuff. So if all of that is going on, the relative bandwidth left to actually receive new information or new insight or new other is dramatically constrained. And I've heard you state that you didn't understand that piece, and then I've heard that whole additional this is the reason for why. And there's an implicit sort of, not only do I not understand it, but I've already judged it as not sort of helpful or meaningful to the mission. Like there's sort of, that's intrinsically woven in the what follows. And almost definitionally, there is an abject refusal or rejection of the possibility that maybe there's another approach or experience of it that's possible. It's sort of taken off the table. And that is a package, right? I don't judge your, that sort of package. I'm not judging you as in some way less than or deficient or good or bad or right or wrong or any of that. That is a very real frame and position and articulation, and a whole lot of people share it. Like you're not alone, and I understand it, and I hear it. What I am experiencing in like-minded collaborations is an alternative to that. Like it's a completely different experiential frame. And in that frame, all of the attachments, judgments, shadows, fears, beliefs, knowledge, all of the stuff accumulated and gathered from stuff in the rearview mirror, stuff in the past, is literally left at the door. And what is created is sort of everything sort of originates and starts with a sort of a construct of space, of literally an empty container that intrinsically that is very much sort of co-manifested as a starting point collectively by each individual having subscribed to a set of values on one hand and a purpose, in service. What am I in service to with you, right? Like those two things have been framed, but those aren't substantive. The values sort of speak to the way we're going to orient in relation to each other in co-creating. It's more of a way kind of dimension to it, meta dimension to it, and the purpose is, is a synthesized, co-created statement of what we are all working in service to. It's a collective statement, but it becomes the sort of litmus test for whatever ends up getting manifested in the center, in this empty space. So it's a different experiential orientation to co-creating that is sort of full spectrum, in the sense that there's all the who, what, where, when, why, it stuff that does emerge when you get down to like a project, the earth level of manifesting something, of bringing something into being. But there are layers and dimensions of co-creation before that are operating on a visioning level, on a crystallizing level, on an energizing level. It's these elemental planes of progressively increasing densities of matter. Like by the time you get down to Earth, it's a project, and it's got, a project lead, and it's got to-dos and needs to move it forward, right? But that's sort of the stop on the train, where everything starts is in an expansion energy. So it's what's the greatest, grandest frame and scope of what is being conceived of,
okay,
as a vision, and then it's sort of this progressive crystallizing. So the first, and the order can change depending upon the nature and energy of the people involved, which is sort of, it's a very flexible, dynamic kind of thing.
Yep.
But that's the difference. And when you come, like my experience of this, having, I spent 3 decades in, old paradigm startup land, right? My experience coming into this in space is completely unencumbered. There's no constraints or limitations. There's no cognitive biases. There's no there's no distorting effects on the generative engagement or process by in between. So it's the elimination of fear and scarcity, which is so predominantly present in old paradigm, people sitting around to start up a new, do something new, birth something new, create something new. There is so much intrinsic fear scarcity that intercedes based on those things being brought in by the individuals that comprise the collaboration. And it's unconscious. It's like they're not even aware of it. And the impact and effect on what ends up getting manifested is the things that get rooted with fear and scarcity operating in one dimension or another end up getting stunted and distorted and negatively affected.
So there's a lot going on. I'm going to try and respond.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
So were you talking about you and me, or were you talking about something else? Because I'm not sure where the fear and scarcity in our interaction is manifesting.
No. It's no.
So fine. That's a good enough answer for me. Okay. Because I think you kind of wandered into this more general topic. Okay. And I thought we were talking about this distinction between you and me.
Yeah. So, no, because I don't feel a difference between you and I. I don't feel a tension or, a trigger, any of that stuff between you and I'm really looking to speak to when you say, I don't understand empty, I'm looking to speak to that.
Yes.
Um,
And I'm looking for that explanation.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And I'm,
So when
I'm
I went
looking
into
to,
fear and scarcity, I was just trying to figure out, okay, so how
yeah.
does that
No,
come into that?
fear and scarcity um, isn't just person to person in a person to person dynamic. It's actually experientially almost imprinted and ingrained on a cellular level in our culture today.
Sure, I
So
understand that.
so people place most of their cognitive orientation, worldviews, beliefs in articulated in an ownership, an almost proprietary way, like this is my belief, right? And but if you unpack some of those, if you drill down into some of those,
They're archetypal.
and and look at, yeah, in an archetypal way, and look at where they were rooted, where they came from or were rooted, the they're born out of a growth medium that's fear, that's competition, fear, scarcity. Like those are the dominant memes
Correct.
of our current cultural paradigm.
Right. So we can agree on that one, okay? But I think
Yeah.
it's not directly germane to what you and I are talking about right now, right?
Well, no. Well, I don't think it is, because our my focus is on your where you placed your ask, which is I don't understand this concept of empty,
Right.
and and part of the challenge of it for anyone, that's rooted in the prevailing paradigm is because um, the prevailing paradigm, everything is objectified, is related to in noun terms, as in terms of most things being converted into things, or being converted into names, being converted into systems, categories, but it's usually a noun centered, a noun oriented framework of sense making.
I feel a projection coming on.
No, 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 no. The where the um, experiential, this sort of alternative experiential orientation and elemental orientation comes from is actually um, connected to cultures that are centered in verbs, not nouns.
It's a huge generalization, Jay. Like,
No, it actually isn't. I mean, the
it's a
five
huge
elements,
generalization.
the five elements tradition is rooted in energy flows and movement in a dynamic living thing. The
All right, let's just
corgis,
talk about you and me, though. Let's just talk about you and me. Okay, there's
okay,
a big theoretical universe out there that you're pulling in. Okay, and I'm hoping that we can actually leave that at the door and just talk about you and me.
you and
Okay,
me.
okay, because
Okay,
what I heard you say was you heard what I asked, and you said you heard that, you get it, and then you asked something about is it possible, right? So I'm going to ask you, is it possible that I heard you?
well, I think you heard me, but your expression was that you didn't understand me.
Right. So you think you understand what I say. You don't think I understand what you say.
Well, I don't have a whole lot of confusion about what you've shared in the past.
Okay. Could it be that I also do not have a lot of confusion? And that when I ask, what do you mean by this? I'm trying to ask for a different expression of your request, one that actually could mean something to someone like me, or Barry, or Colin, or Carl Sagan, or Isaac Asimov. I'm asking for a different expression of what your ask is.
Ah, okay. I did not hear it that way.
That's right.
Um,
So may I clarify that a little bit?
Sure.
Okay. There's a saying, I think in the Zen terms, you cannot pour into a full cup, right? So in that sense, I understand what it means to be empty. Be receptive. Be ready to receive. That is a notion I very much embrace. But is it really empty? There is a cup. There is a space. It is in a location. It is ready to receive. All of that are conditions. And so they kind of describe what it is that's ready to receive. So I can describe myself as receptive, as listening, as attentive, as in this Zoom session, as really trying to pay attention. I could describe all of that, okay? And if that's enough to say I am empty, then I believe I am empty in those terms that perhaps match to yours. What I'm saying is that emptiness doesn't recognize all else that comes. I can be truly receptive and yet come with a grasp of English. I can be truly empty and receptive and yet still come with an understanding of normal protocols of conversation. I can be truly empty and receptive and still understand things in systemic terms. I can understand things in energetic terms. I can understand things in spiritual terms. I can have all of that understanding and yet still be very attentive and very receptive. Is that possible? Can you imagine that?
Yes.
That's great, because now I think there is a possible movement towards some mutual understanding of what emptiness might mean. See, when I say I'm empty in those ways that I just described in the last 90 seconds or so, I believe you are empty in that way. But just as I believe I come with my understanding of English, I believe you come with your understanding of English. Just as you come with, your understanding of what energy means to you, I can understand what energy means to you and map it to what your framework is around energy, and yet have my own different notion of energy in a different context. So I'm understanding the term energy by grokking you in your terms.
Understood.
Right? So when I'm trying to do this mapping of what empty in your frame means to what I just described, I say, okay, as long as you actually see that as well, we don't have much difference to argue about. But I do think, though, when you say come completely empty and leave everything at the door, this notion could be described. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I gotta go. This is,
right.
but
Okay.
let's. Can we remember where we are and start here again?
I'll share it just with you. Okay.
Okay. Right.
Have a good time. I hope everything's well.
Thanks. Okay. Bye. Hello. Hey.